FYI, we'll be talking to two individuals today, one of which is Roan in the Discord, who I've spoken to previously. How do I say this politely? Roan's on his way to getting out of his progressive mind virus.
Progressive mind virus.
I just got a notification that Ruth Bader Ginsburg died!
I think conservatives on the right, liberals in the center, progressives on the left. That is how I conceptualize things. And uber progressive is all the woke, so to speak, if we were to define it like that. And Roan is on that borderline progressive. But before we talk to Roan, we're talking to what have you come to bitch to me about, and what do you think I'm wrong about that you are in fact
I've come to be relieved of my progressive mind virus, I guess.
You've come to the right place.
Oh, yeah, just kind of wanted to talk about your video and a few points that you made. I have a few contentions with some of the objections that you made to the two guys that we're talking about, Dawkins.
Yes,
and
rationality rules and renegade science pastor.
Yes. I was pretty kind of 50-50 on a lot of that stuff, but I wanted to do this kind of structured. I had some time stamps that I could give you to just kind of go through specific.
Sure. You want me to pull up the video?
I wrote down what you said, but you could also do that if you want. I'm
a big fan of primary evidence and playing my own videos on stream. So
absolutely.
Let's do that. Go ahead.
Before we jump into it, though, I kind of wanted to ask you just kind of a few clarifying questions, if we could do that.
Okay. You're free to ask.
Okay. So do you believe that there is any like singular objective final definition of a word, or can we disagree on what we think words ought to mean?
Oh, of course we can disagree.
Hash that out. Okay. Because I don't like in some of these conversations I'll have with people where like one of us defines a word a certain way because we're trying to kind of think through a complicated idea, and then the other person jumps and is like, well, no, the actual definition of this word is like, this, because what we're here to do is to think, right? And so part of that is kind of to hash out what we think that words should mean. So I won't do that to you if you won't do it to me.
Okay. I reserve the right to do it to you, though, because it's my stream, and if I'm losing in this debate, I need to weasel out of it. I'm also gonna. Can you turn off your camera just because it's probably less distracting, I think.
Yeah, I'll turn it off
since it's not coming through anyway.
Okay.
I'm also gonna get rid of your pronoun tag because people won't understand it without the camera up.
Very true.
All right. So what do we got? What do you got? What do you got for me?
Well, so first off, do you believe that there is a difference between sex and gender, and if so, what is that distinction to you?
Depends. When I buy a ticket on United Airlines and ask me what gender I am, I have the options of male and female. So as far as United Airlines is concerned, there's no difference between sex and gender, and I seem to understand what they mean. I think of gender as like masculine and feminine, and then sex is male, female, man, woman. Okay.
Did you watch my video I made about trans people? I know that you commented on it. I'm not sure if you saw the meat of it.
I think I did. I think I did, maybe.
Okay, because that's my framing of it, because it's it's very contentious, but my model is that sex is your chromosomes, it is the biological features about you that differentiate the two sexes, and then gender are the secondary sex characteristics that kind of emerge from that affect your physical appearance, and then on top of that, there's gender roles. Because that's what I think most people actually mean when they say it. And I think that clears up a lot of the confusion that transgender people kind of talk about whenever they try to hash out what is gender really.
Okay. I don't think that's at all a good definite, like having a beard is not a function of sex, not gender.
It's not the beard. I would say that it's the entirety of how you look. So if you picture what you think a biological male looks like and you see their face, you socially identify them as that thing, that is like a man. The entire facial structure, like everything about them that you could observe.
In my mind, and I think in most people's minds, a man is an adult human male and a woman is an adult human female. Gender is like masculine and feminine. Okay. So like, for example, I, as a non-binary person, I drink red wine. I like the TV show Friends. I'm kind of feminine, right? And I don't know why people say that all the time, but like, okay, that's gender, feminine and masculine. But I still have a penis.
Okay. Yeah, that's yes. I don't use that framework because I think that because
you have a progressive mind virus, it's fine. This is why you'll come here.
Oh, exactly. I think that to define a person like Blair White or Buck Angel, that framework is not adequate. And I was having this conversation with this person in your Discord, who I will not name, they'll know who they are, but they were telling me, I tried to give them this little thought experiment that if you were to have sex with Buck Angel and you're a straight man, would that be gay? And this person bit the bullet and they were like, no, it would not be gay to fuck Buck Angel. If you, this big Hulk Hogan, meaty looking dude, if he sucked your dick, that would not be gay.
Okay.
He said that Buck Angel is a woman with masculine characteristics and that he would feel disgusted if he fucked Buck Angel in the same sense that he would feel disgusted if he fucked like a very ugly or very fat woman. But that it would not be gay. And I think that's a ridiculous position. I think it's absolutely gay if you were to do that. And
it's again, it goes back to the it's like, okay, what difference does it make whether it is or is not gay?
Like intrinsically, I guess it's just whatever
it's just semantic.
Right, exactly. But to me, that is what that is. And so like I feel like Buck Angel, I perceive Buck Angel as a man. I don't believe that Buck Angel is biologically male. Of course not. But
Buck Angel is biologically female.
Yes. Yeah. So they are biologically female, but I would say that their gender is a man because that is what
sure. Well,
if you saw this person in society, that's all you would ever perceive.
Sure, it'd be like this. I'd be like this dude over here, and Blair White. I would say, yeah, that chick in the corner over there. Blah blah blah. Of course.
Right. Okay.
And just to ground things, because this always happens with discussions of gender, and this is not your fault. This is just the nature of the conversation. The only reason this conversation is relevant, and this Richard Dawkins making these points is relevant, is because there are legal protections and social conventions that are around male and female that should not be allowed to change just because someone says they're male or female.
I agree.
Okay, so that's why we're having the discussion to begin with. Let's say.
Yeah, because I would draw the distinction between males and females versus people's gender as being like you could call it man or woman.
All right, so
we could invent like a new word for it.
Yeah. What did I say that you think is wrong or misguided?
Okay, so first timestamp is 118 whenever you respond to him.
118. Let me play the first minute of it.
Okay.
Right in.
It is a very odd phenomenon because I'm used to continue wherever I look.
Also, I just have to point out how many levels of reaction we're deep in this right now. It's me reacting to me, reacting to them, reacting to Richard Dawkins.
We are truly trapped in
this is what Oberon exactly was referring to.
And there's tall versus short, fat versus thin, old versus young. All these things are a smooth continuum. The one thing that isn't is sex. I mean, sex really is binary. There's no question about it. You're either male or female, and it's absolutely clear. You can do it on gamete size. You can do it on chromosomes. And so it is, to me, as a biologist, distinctly weird that people can simply declare, I am a woman, though I have a penis. That seems to me to be a strange distortion of language, because language is useful as something to express your thoughts clearly.
Forrest, my dude. What do you make of what was
my dude?
It strikes me as odd for a couple of reasons.
I have a friend that says
number one, he's explaining the reality of biology. There are continua everywhere. There's really there's nothing you can put into a solid box. Everything is fuzzy. Everything is gray. And he's like, except for this one thing though. This one thing is it has to be this way. And he's backing that up using the categories that we created.
Using the categories that we've created. This is the first indication of the religious mind virus that has affected these so-called atheists. Anytime you hear someone referring to the categories that we've created, how male and female are socially constructed categories. That's why sex is assigned at birth, not observed at birth, because we assigned a category based on the construction of language.
Can stop it there.
That's an indication that this person may.
So you say that whenever he says using categories that we created, did we not create the category, the word of sex, to describe a referent or a thing in reality that is pragmatic?
Yes, we created the word because that's what language is.
Right. So we observed a thing in reality, right?
And put a word to it.
Right. And so to me, how this works is like we create categories because we observe traits that people have in common. And then we notice a pattern of these traits that tend to correlate together. And we kind of, we abstract out that trait across a bunch of sets of people. And that trait becomes its own like metaphysical entity that we treat as a category. And then we assign that category to people that have those traits or those definitions. And so we create, and the category is not just based on one specific referent, it's based on a bundle of things. And so we choose to draw lines around things insofar that it's pragmatic. Like, obviously, biological sex, the thing that you and I are thinking of when I say that, is real. People have XX chromosomes and XY chromosomes. About, I think,
penises and vaginas.
Right. So most of the time, like 98% of the time, those things do correlate together. There's a
99.9.
Well, so about 1.6% of people are intersex. And so, like, naturally,
I don't think that's. It depends on what you define as.
We can even say that it's like 1%. You know,
sure, it's an extreme minority.
Right. And so pragmatically, we can even say that it's like 99.9999% if you want. But But that is a model that you can use in the world to say that these are it's a binary. These are the only two categories that apply to people, and you can go through your life with that model and pretty much be fine. But for that 0.0000, whatever 1%, it's closer to 1 or 2%. For those edge cases, that model does not apply because because those categories of that category of biological sex that we constructed to describe reality pragmatically does not apply to those edge cases. And that's what this entire conversation is zoomed in on and is about, are those edge cases. So we did. Yes, it is. The conversation around trans people, the reason we're talking about this is because for those people, those categories do not neatly describe how they are. Once you take exogenous hormones, once you look like Blair White or Buck Angel, you have the appearance of one sex.
Let's watch this clip here.
I don't agree with this person. I don't agree with this person.
Oh, okay. So,
no, of course not.
Well, hold on. Just for people watching, let's reference the clip.
Sure.
The opposite sex, not gender.
So the first is the very language of you were born and I'm not biological somehow. Like, I don't think I'm a cyborg. So like this idea that like, you're not a biological woman. Well, I am a woman. That's a fact. I am female. So all my identity records, my racing license, my medical records all say female, right? And I'm pretty sure I'm made of biological stuff. So I'm a biological female as well.
And then you add on top.
Okay, so that's what the conversation is about. Males, saying, I'm a female, and then entering women's spaces.
Yeah, so that's not the conversation that I'm trying to have, though. Because
fair enough.
I don't agree with that. I don't think
that is why I made this video. That is what I was referencing in this video.
Okay,
the reason I made this video is because that's a real issue.
Sure, but Dawkins at the beginning was saying that because sex is a binary, that a person cannot identify as a woman. But again, and I think that even Rationality Rules points this out, that Dawkins is mixing up sex and gender. And so that's kind of the whole source of the confusion.
Not if you define woman as adult human female, which most people do.
Right. And so I don't. And so that's why, and I think that that's not a good definition of woman. Or we can leave woman to be that, and then we invent a new word to describe people that look like Blair White. But saying so.
Well, but here's the thing. So like to your point, like Blair White, and this is what the people on the right would be upset with me for saying is, I of course will refer to Blair White as a she, and that chick like that woman over there, because she looks like a woman.
Right.
And for the purpose of communicating to someone, hey, I enter a restaurant. I'm meeting someone here. Yeah, who is it? We can find you their table. It's that woman over there in the green dress. Oh, okay. It wouldn't make sense to be like that dude over there.
Right, exactly. And I think that you would also perceive Blair White as a woman. Like in the conceptual map in your own mind, you see her and you cannot help but feel like this is woman because she meets all the criteria.
And I perceive this dude as a man.
Right. I perceive that person as gender strange. They are in the middle. I'm not sure what that person would be.
You don't know if this is a male or female?
Male or female. I mean, that could be a very feminine looking dude. That could be a kind of a masculine-ish looking woman. I'm not entirely sure what that person's biology is. I'm not sure.
Let me do this real quick. Are you really sure that you're not sure if that person?
I am not 100% sure. No, because I'm
not 100% sure you're conscious. So
because I've seen cisgender women that look like that. Because a lot of women just especially as they get older, they start to look a bit more masculine. I don't know. That's the thing. I can make a guess, but I don't know, Paul.
To your point, I don't know that you're conscious.
Right. But you can make a pretty
educated
guess that I'm conscious, right? Yeah.
Right. But so knowledge, this is another like linguistic game that the postmodern neo-constructionists like yourself play. Just kidding, but only half kidding. Is, well, technically you can never be certain about anything ever, because I'm not talking about. So anytime you make a claim, this is true, it's like, well, that's assuming that reality as you perceive it is real.
Yeah, I'm not saying that certainty to make a claim does not require 100% certainty, but it requires a pretty great deal of certainty. I am not sure what that person is.
Okay, I'm a great deal certain that this person is not biologically female.
If you saw that person outside of this context, I could see that person being like a big boned woman. I've met women, like cisgender women in real life that look like that. So
very masculine women out there, yes. And notice how you say masculine and feminine, hence the gender part of it.
Right.
Masculine and femininity is a spectrum, and it's social, and it's I don't know if it's socially constructed. There's certainly a lot of social influence on gender, but gender is abstracted out of sex. So like aggression is going to correspond more with being male, even though there are plenty of aggressive females. But certainly having a penis is going to correspond almost entirely with being a male and not at all with being a female. But what is the next timestamp that you have an issue with?
Well, so I feel like you've kind of pulled us down a rabbit hole here. I want to reframe.
The truth to you, these postmodernists, is a rabbit hole, but that's fair.
Yes. My point in the first place was I objected specifically to you saying that person saying, like, using categories that we created is a sign of a religious mind virus of gender ideology.
I said it's an indication, because I do agree, because
I just want to finish real quick. Go ahead. That statement is what I take issue with, because we are using categories that we created, because language is a category to describe patterns or bundles of things in reality that we deem pragmatic. So we did create the category of sex, and then we observe that people have the traits that we define that category as, and then we assign them that category, because there is a feedback loop between observation and assignment, between prescription and description. I think we absolutely do that. And so that is why I object to that.
That's fair. Do you think we created the category of up and down?
Sure. Yeah, of course, because there's a thing in reality that we observe, and that is the effect of gravity, that we know whenever we drop things, they go a certain direction, and whenever we and they never go the other direction unless they have like helium in them or something. And so we were like, how do we describe this thing that is happening? And we conceptualize it as up and down, because here on Earth we have gravity that exists, and then so we created those words to describe that thing, because it's real and
we created the words, but up and down existed long before there were words to describe them.
Yes, the referent exists in objective reality.
Right.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so this is my point. It's a vacuous claim. This is my point. No. Hold on. Let me just to clarify. Okay. I believe it is a vacuous claim to point out that words are constructed. It's like, yes, of course, that's language differs depending on what language you speak. This is the Vosh point. Well, in south of the border, they call it aqua. Right. So it's like, that's because that proves that language is constructed. It's like, no.
Okay, so I don't think it's a vacuous claim. I think I understand what you're saying, that people can use that to pretend to be smart, but it's like vacuous underneath, because it's like, duh, of course, like words are made up. But where it's not vacuous, I don't think I'm doing the vacuous version of that, and here's why.
Of course
because sometimes whenever we create certain words and concepts and they're bundles of things, and we say that is the model through which we view reality and have to categorize all people by, sometimes we get things wrong, because the purpose of language is to develop a map that fits over the landscape of reality as we perceive and understand it, because we're trying to get close to what reality is. And so there's a circumambulation, right? As we change and shift the definitions of words and categories to get closer to what is real. And that's why you have to point out to people that language is constructed, because where there are gaps, where our previous categories and our bundles of definitions start to not fit, we notice the cracks, we have to be willing to update and change them.
Agreed.
And that's why I say that language is constructed, because to a conservative, they say, well, there's men and there's women and that's that, and you're one or the other and blah, blah, blah.
And
it's
they're
like, well,
pretty much right.
and they're pretty much right. But on the edge cases, they're not. And that's what this conversation is about, is those edge cases. Again, because whenever you're talking about trans people, whenever you're talking about intersex people, or people that take exogenous hormones, that get surgeries, that, you know, transition to look again like very passing trans men or trans women, those people do not fit the criteria of those two categories as we have defined it for most of human history. And so we're redefining these terms because I think it is pragmatic to do so. We have to have a new word to describe, because 200 years ago, a person like Blair White couldn't exist because we didn't have exogenous estrogen to give people and the surgery to do that. But now that we do, naturally
trans woman.
Right. The aesthetic of looking like a woman and being a biological female have always correlated 1-to-1, 99.9% of the time.
Sure.
But now that, because of modern technology and medicine, that's changing. So we're realizing now, oh, the thing that we were calling sex for all of history, it's actually several things. So we're parsing into that category and trying to take out of it.
We have a term for that. It's trans woman.
Exactly. Right. And I'm fine with that. But conservatives refuse to call people that because they're like, no,
I don't think so. I don't think a conservative
Most conservatives I know would say no, like that is a man.
You could be right. My intuition and my experience is that conservatives don't have a problem with saying Blair White is a trans woman or this person is a trans woman, as long as we agree that trans women are not literally female.
Yes, I would say that I agree with that.
Okay.
So
what's the next timestamp?
Yeah, and so just again, I'm not trying to have like a meta conversation about like who believes what in the world.
We're already meta reacting
about the arguments.
Reacting to them, so we're having the meta conversation. Okay, that's
True.
fair.
Okay, so but just to tie that up,
yep.
You understand what I'm saying, though? That
I do understand what you're saying.
We create that category, and then we assign that to people based on what we observe if they fit the criteria of that category. Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay. So the next point, it kind of ties into the same thing. It's at 215. And this is just one sentence. I can just read it, where Dawkins says that there is this push in the social sciences that biological sex is just a social construct and there's no real validity to the concept of male and female. Right. Okay. And then, so I disagree with that criticism. I think there are certainly some people that say that. That's not my argument. Right. So there are some people that say that, but there's plenty of trans people and or pro-trans people, myself included, that make that differentiation that biological sex is a social construct in the sense that that word is a category we created. But it because it's a way of categorizing it or organizing reality, but it is an extremely useful categorization because it's based on real meaningful things that we observe, distinctions that we cannot help but observe. Just because a thing is a social construct does not mean that there is no validity to the concept of it. Of course, there's validity to the concept, like the concept of race is valid, even though we clearly socially construct race. But Black people still exist. So race is partly biological,
obviously.
Sorry?
Race is partly biological, obviously.
So if we want to do this very quick on race, the referent, okay, so clearly people are different, but where we choose to draw our lines around what constitutes Blackness or whiteness is pretty arbitrary because, 200,000 years ago, we all look the exact same. We departed North Africa around 160,000 years ago, and it's only been since then that humans have looked different. So in that chain of people, when was the first white person? When was the first Chinese person?
This is all continuum fallacy type stuff where it's like, well,
it's not a fallacy.
At what point did humans become human?
Right. There's no exact line. We just kind of draw a line somewhere when a species or a group of people become, to our perception, pragmatically or we could say sufficiently distinct enough to warrant being given a new category. We give them that category, but it is fuzzy and it's not absolute.
Agreed. All right, let's move on to another point if it's worth making.
Okay, so then, but again, so just to for my second point then, that whenever Dawkins said that because they say that it's a social construct, that means that there's no validity to it. do you understand my contention there? That, well, no, things can be constructed by us, but there's still validity to them. That's why we construct them in the first place.
This is syndrome. Do you agree that every single word in every single category is socially constructed?
Yes.
Okay, well then it's a worthless. Then to say that something is socially constructed is completely vacuous.
No, it's not, Paul. Because the reason we say it is to remind ourselves that the reason that we socially construct these categories is to describe reality pragmatically. And so when our understanding of reality shifts, or whenever maybe like reality itself changes, we have to be willing to update.
Okay, I disagree that we need to remind ourselves of that. The only ism that I would ever even remotely consider identifying as, besides PF Jungianism, is pragmatism. So Jordan Peterson is like, if Jordan Peterson's anything, he's a pragmatist.
Right.
So the people who you are attempting to say, you need to remember that language is pragmatic. It's like, yes, that's literally what
I think
everyone
most people, I think that you are not included in this, but I think that most people, that does not come intuitively to them. They feel like once that language describes something essential about something in reality, and that word is like the model through which we view reality.
You think? What about
we have to fit everything?
What about like a platonic form, like a triangle?
What do you mean?
Like a triangle has three sides and equals 180 degrees. It's a platonic form. There are no real triangles. And how about numbers? 2 + 2 is 4.
Yes.
Are those socially constructed as well?
No, because that's a tautology. The definition of 4 is 2 + 2 and 3 + 1. So those are saying the same thing.
Okay, I don't even want to. Let's not even get into that.
No, it's fine. I'm just.
No, I'm telling you, it sounds too complicated.
Sure, I'm very much not trying to be obtuse. The point here. That's a good point. Is that I think that most people need. Sorry, what?
We were just talking about triangles, and then you said.
Aha! Yes, there we go. That was actually an accident, but I'll take credit for it.
That is objectively.
The point, I know it can sound vacuous, and there are trans, activists that do it very vacuously, and we'll get to that.
Mainstream trans activists.
Yeah, because there's points in your video that I very much agree with that we can talk about in a second. But I just want to say that there is a reasonable version of that claim that I'm trying to make that I think most people, to them, their conception of language maps on to what they think reality is, and they genuinely don't realize that we construct language and that these definitions and terms can shift because we made them up in the first place.
I wish people listened to Jordan Peterson more, and they would be disabused of that notion.
Yeah, right before he went in the coma. That would be great.
I agree. All right, next point.
Okay. Just wait, I have one more thing. Just because, there's some cultures that don't have words for certain colors, like they combine green and blue into the same thing. And so to them, they would not differentiate blue and green. They would call that kind of the same thing. But to us, we draw more lines. And so that's
some cultures don't have left and right. They only have north, west, south, east. And they're actually better at navigating and determining where they are in a location. So language absolutely structures your reality.
Yeah, and all that just to say that I think for most people, whether we like it or not, that fact does not come intuitively. So that is why the reminder is necessary, especially for a thing as complicated as like our perception of the sexes is very fundamental, because we want to know if a person is a potential mating partner. That's like the base of a lot of this. And so it's such a fundamental conceptual category we have that the trans stuff is very confusing. And so people just kind of get fed up with it, and they go, no, you're a man or a woman, that's it, there's no difference between gender, sex, whatever. And I'm saying, well, I think it's time that we kind of we unpack the bag, the category of sex, and we think that we say, okay, well, there's more things to it. There's actually a whole lot of things in that people can be. They can have a few traits of one, a few traits of the other. Well, which are they? Well, we don't have to fit them into that perfect binary.
Right. I think your mission of trying to remind people that language is socially constructed, because you're interested in facilitating the well-being of trans people, as you are with other people. Well, I think your time. Go ahead.
Well, that's one thing, but I'm also just concerned with truth. I come at this from a
truth
philosophical
is not an objective
angle.
Category. It's truth is utilitarian. So
right.
Your end goal
I come
is
at this first. I come at this first from a philosophical perspective. Any political or social implications are secondary to me. I care about.
It's so funny
care
because
about
that's the
ontology
opposite of what this whole conversation. Truth does not exist independent of goals and a hierarchy of values. You are primarily concerned with the well-being of others, including trans people, which is why you pursue this line of questioning or this line of thinking.
No, I disagree. I think that on one hand, I do value the well-being of all people, but I also value having the most accurate understanding of reality that I am capable of having, given the hardware that I have in my consciousness. So
okay. So here's what I would say before we move on to the next point. Your time would be much better spent making videos explaining why this is complete nonsense. You would be doing more for trans people if people like yourself, progressives, called this stuff out.
I did in my trans video. I have several minutes at the end where I talk about the differences
that's fair.
between sex and gender.
Yeah. I'm just saying.
I have to do both. I want to balance both claims.
Fair
but
enough.
Again, because I care about truth.
Centrism, baby.
The thing that is true to me is that sex is a complicated category. Some people don't fit neatly into both boxes. Okay. And that's exactly what rationality rules said, was that if we only have these two categories, that misses the nuance that can describe most people.
Color is complicated. At what point a red becomes orange is a very complicated process. Male and female are very binary. They're not nearly as complicated.
Yes, but I think that most people intuitively consider sex and gender the same thing. So like
United Airlines.
Here's what they consider man. Most people do this. Okay, you have an XY chromosome, a penis, higher testosterone, a beard. You have or you have this facial structure. You look like a man. You have the voice of a man. You have sperm. All of those things are what they consider man.
You mean like this person?
And I consider that a lot of different types of traits, that you can have a penis, you can have testicles, an XY chromosome, but you can have the voice of a woman. You can look like a woman, present as a woman, check every single box of the category of woman, except for your chromosomes and your genitals. But every other thing is of the box of
like
woman.
Blair White.
So what is that person? Well, that's why we need this new category. That's all I'm saying. Right.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next point.
Okay. Okay. You say we can just watch this if you want. 740. It's the part where you say that
people are mainlining autism.
It's the part where you're saying that you're claiming that postmodernists think that if you find an exception to a category, therefore the entire definition is not real. So
this is your brain on pure logic and nerd shit, just pure autism mainline. Okay, saying
baby.
That a male is someone who has a penis, you're just appealing to people's intuitions. What? This is what I'm talking about. This is gaslighting religious dogma right here.
Because it's not like if you put a eunuch in front of him, Richard's going to go, "Oh, I don't know who that is. I don't know if that's a man or a woman." Yeah. Now it's tricky.
Oh my God. This is my point. You have to be completely dedicated to your religious cause to not see how blind and stupid the point of, you have a definition of a word. I found an exception, therefore the entire definition is useless. Well, a male is someone who has a penis. But what if someone's penis gets cut off? Okay, I guess males don't exist. Well, a human is someone who has a heart and 2 arms and 2 legs. But the Siamese twins, well, there's 2 people in one body. They have 1 heart, so really they only have half a heart. It's like, okay, so therefore they're no humans. And it's not nearly as embarrassing.
So you can stop it there. Okay, so here's my objection.
I just want to say, everything I said was not only objectively correct; it was perfectly delivered.
Hey, based and red pilled. Okay, we'll see. My response to that is that no, humans do obviously exist. Okay, but here's where the confusion is: that a tendency is not the same thing as like a categorical prerequisite. Okay, so like for example, 99.99% of humans have 1 heart and 2 arms and 2 legs. That is a reality that we can observe, with the exception of people that are born with defects, or they lose a limb, or the
Siamese twins. Yes,
right. So that's a reality that we can observe. But having 1 heart and 2 arms and 2 legs is not a necessary prerequisite to being human. It simply means that most humans tend to have 1 heart and 2 arms and 2 legs. Because even if you lose your arms and legs, we still consider you human, right? So that means that the traits a thing has that made us define it as human in the first place were something other than the arms and legs, because that metaphysical concept. The category of human survived after the person lost those body parts.
Okay.
So the humanity that we really care about here is something else, which to me would be consciousness, sentience, personhood, right? But no, an observed tendency is not the same thing as a categorical prerequisite. That's the confusion there.
I agree.
Okay. Yeah. So my objection was to you saying that you're painting these people like they're saying, oh, well, I found an exception to a definition, therefore the entire category isn't real. That's not, I think that's a straw man, Paul, because that's
what this person is saying.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about that person.
Okay, but this is my point. Okay, and this is where we have to get away from the abstract right now. The reason that I waste my own time talking about these subjects is because people like this are saying these things, which then cause crazy shit to go on in schools and all other places, and that causes people to hate each other and commit acts of civil violence. That's what I'm concerned about.
Okay,
whatever semantic argument we want to have about, well, what exactly is the transcendent, categorical, metaphysical category of male? It's like there's no point in talking about that unless it relates to something relevant. And this is infinitely more relevant than whatever semantic description we provide of metaphysical categories of male.
Okay, and that's fine, and I agree, but I just want to point out that I want to reframe that here because there's two distinct conversations. One is about the philosophy and the ontology of things, and the other is about the social consequences in like a sociological political framework. Those are two separate conversations.
Absolutely not.
They're related,
they are but the same. No.
Paul.
They are absolutely the same, and trying to distinguish between them is the definition of intellectual masturbation.
Paul, it's not, because there is a conversation about philosophical ideas and making arguments, and then then we can have a conversation about in society, how are people using some of these ideas to do certain things and the implications, and where should we push back on both ends?
Wrong.
Those are explain to me how you think that philosophy is not separate from the implications socially.
Why do we talk about philosophy?
Lots of different reasons. We could just care about truth itself. We could.
Why do we care about truth?
Well, one of them is just for intellectual fun. That's a big reason I do it. And
I agree. That's intellectual masturbation. That was my point.
And then the other is for the pragmatic applications, right?
I.e., what I just described.
Right, and I'm willing to have both of those conversations to push back on the extremes of both ends, and I do that. I did that in my video, and I'm open.
Intellectual masturbation doesn't do that. It's connecting it to the political and pragmatic is what.
No, it's not intellectual because first we have to be able to have a conversation to establish like the philosophy before we can then go into the culture and try to explain things to people. Right now, we're having a conversation about the philosophy, about the truth of it. So me and you can personally hash this out with our audience of 15 people, and then later we can have a conversation about how to communicate this to the public and how to word things and have nuance.
No, first we have to figure out why even spend our time talking about this, and then we proceed to have the conversation. If you ignore the reason of why we're talking about it, then it is, as you pointed out, intellectually fun, i.e. masturbation. Okay,
so but you, again, I think you've reframed this. Like my point.
I've regrounded it in reality.
My point was about philosophy. You are saying that if you have a category and then a person says, oh, well, I found an exception to this category and therefore the category isn't real. And that doesn't just apply to trans people, Paul. That applies to all kinds of things. Yeah. I'm saying that is a straw man of what that ontological argument is. And my only contention with that is that, again, there's a difference in a category between a requirement, a necessary prerequisite to be of that category, versus a thing that once you meet those criteria and you're of that category, there are additional unnecessary correlations that category tends to have.
Is that that's my only contingent property?
That's my own right. So that's my point. So that what you said about that's why I think it was incorrect, because of that point. That is a straw man of the idea.
How is it a straw man when this person is saying that? And they're a mainstream trans activist on one of the most mainstream comedy shows.
I'm trying to articulate that.
You're trying to ignore the reason.
No, I'm not ignoring it, because I'm willing to have that conversation too. But
that's the only conversation.
It's a separate point.
That's why I made the video.
Okay.
Because if this did not happen, if this if this interview never happened and people were not saying this, I would not have made that video.
Okay, well, so that point of that philosophical point that I'm making can, even if trans people didn't exist, would still be a relevant conversation to have, because that might apply to race too. Like, people used to think, oh, well, like if you're black, then that means like this and that about you.
I maybe.
But then to that person, I would say, well, yeah, well, to that person, you know, I would say, well, we have to define what being black means, and then we can describe things that correlate with being black. But is that like an essential property of blackness? But that's my whole point. We can move on if you'd like.
Yeah. What's the next thing?
All that's left is just parts where I actually agree with you. So maybe that would be
all right.
Nice,
well, let's
nice change of pace.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll wrap it up on some agreement.
So there's 2 points here that I agree with you 100% on. One of them is at 10:06. Where a renegade science teacher says that people hate trans women because of misogyny. And so you said, no, that they don't perceive them as women, so it's not misogyny. And I would
90% of the time, 90+% of the time, we are only talking about trans women. Always. And for me, I see that just because this is the opportunity for mixing homophobia and sexism into the diarrhea martini called transphobia.
Delicious.
And like that's what I see.
Remind
yeah.
And my point was the people who are critical of trans people don't actually see them as women. So how can it be misogyny? It's just an opportunity to
this is one of the brain dead
incantations.
points that I hear from a lot of hardcore lefties, that, well, the reason that people are having such an issue with this is because of misogyny. But it's like, yeah, so if you... Prejudice is about intent. If you were blindfolded and you thought a person was black, so you shoot them, but then you take off the blindfold and find out they're Asian, that doesn't make you racist towards Asians. It makes you racist against black people. It's what you think they are that causes you to dislike them, right? It's your perception of them, right? So I totally agree with that. But that's kind of a point that I think a lot of the progressives have to die on that hill, because to them, if trans women are women in like their absolute essence, that any hatred of them has to be coded as misogyny. But I would say to them that, well, maybe a trans woman cannot help how she perceives herself as a woman. So trans people can't help how they perceive themselves, but other people can't help how they perceive that trans person either. And so if you ask, are they a woman? I would say, well, that honestly, I mean, that depends on who you ask. I think if you ask the trans person
the utility
about themselves, yeah, they would say, yes, I'm a woman. But if you asked, say, if they're very non-passing, you know, pre-op, pre-surgery, and you ask just a standard person, they would say, oh, that's a man. And so this is why, yeah, that claim about it being misogyny is, I would say, very wrong, very dumb.
Nice. Agreed.
Yes. So the other point that I agree with you on was at 1308, whenever this is some shit, dude. I've gotten into so much shit with people for this, but it's the idea whenever he says that they realized that they were men or women all along, that these are socially constructed categories, and yet all along in their essence, they were a man or woman.
Is a man and woman. Is it not a category?
Look, I realized that I am a man. I came to terms with the fact that I am a man. And it's why, you know, people talk about, you know,
what is a man and woman? Is it not a
stop wearing clothes? I realized that I am a man. I came to terms with the fact that I am a man.
That isn't.
And it's why, you know, people talk about, you know,
why do you need gender reassignment surgery to do it? This is the concept of a soul, literally in atheist form.
They don't want to use the word born male or born female. They prefer the term assigned male or female. They thought I was this. Turns out I was that.
Right. The doctor saw my penis and assumed I was male, the bigot. But as a true believer, I know that I am truly on the inside. See, we can talk about subjectivity and objectivity. That was objectively just great delivery. Okay. Like this is primarily a comedy channel. You know, this whole thing is a joke. Reality is a joke. And I am just merely a reflection of reality.
That was very good. I enjoyed it.
But do you agree that gender identity is like a soul, basically?
Yes, I think in the definition of how some of these people use it, yes. I don't. So I'm a non-essentialist. I don't believe anything has an essence to it.
Nothing is real. Everything is permitted.
Maybe. So I think that the way that I think this ought to be how everybody does it, but the way that I think of language in categories is that we look at something, we observe the traits that it has, and then we call it a category, a label based on that bundle of traits that it has. And then we can decide what those traits are to meet the prerequisites to be that category. Because there's nothing that anything is in like a fundamental sense, because that's where we're using language. We're calling a thing a noun. And a noun is really just kind of a compressed list of descriptors, of adjectives, right? So
okay,
instead of saying...
We'll end on this question, and we'll talk for maybe 5 or 10 more minutes, because I want to wrap up the stream here. Do you think pain, the category and the concept of pain, is also socially constructed?
Well, so I think all language is socially constructed, but it's constructed to describe a referent or something, some perception about reality that we perceive that is real. So yes, I mean it's both. I mean pain.
Well, you just said nothing is, in essence, suffering in essence is perhaps the only fundamental thing that is essentially what it is, stands for itself, and is not and cannot be argued against in any way. Suffering is essential. It's an essential part of reality. Reality does not exist without suffering.
Yeah, so that's a slightly different use of the word essential, but I would agree with you. So whenever I'm talking about non-essentialism, I'm talking about it in the classic sense of how, and not to, I'm not going to gish gallop with a bunch of philosophy here, but just to keep it simple, it's in the way that David Hume described it, which is just that there is not one unsubdividable, like one fundamental quality that a thing has that makes it what it is, that all things are just sums of parts. It's more of it is something that has perceptual continuity, a thing that we perceive. And so we kind of draw a line around that perception, but there is no thing materially that it is like down to like a fundamental level. That makes it have a permanent, unchanging essence. So
suffering does.
Yeah.
Suffering
so if you change
essence.
the parts, you change the thing. And this is more in reference to like physical reality. I guess in terms of things like pain or suffering, I would need to think about that more. But I would say that the thing we call pain and suffering, it's simply an experience, and that experience is complicated. It's multi-layered. There's lots of different types of pain and suffering.
Yep.
People might consider things painful that other people don't.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, like these are categories we constructed though, because we want to differentiate. Pain usually means anything that is, I guess, unpleasant, but we usually reserve the word suffering to mean pain that is so intense that it's unnecessary.
It's not redemptive. Like you experience pain when you work out, but the pain that you experience ends up in a reduction of future pain because you get stronger.
Right.
So
exactly.
Suffering is pain without value, essentially. It's irredeemable.
Sure. And so those are two ideas that we constructed to describe human experiences. And I think, and in Japanese, they have so many more words to describe flavors and subdivisions of emotions and experiences than we do in English. And so you can continue to subdivide those and draw your categorical lines in different places. But I would agree that those ideas are constructs, but they're attempting to get at something real that we experience.
Fair enough.
I just have one last point here, just to.
I was going to say, I want to wrap this up in about 2-3 minutes. So go ahead.
Sure. Just to kind of tie up the whole thing about people discovering that they were at their essence a man or woman, and why I don't agree with that. I would say that I look at that a category is a bundle of traits, and so if you look at something and you meet the traits, you check all the boxes, then you are of that category. The thing, whenever trans people will say, "Well, I was always a woman all along," I was like, well, in the way that I define the word woman, if you do not meet any of the criteria of being a woman, then definitionally, ontologically, you are not that thing. Because it's like, what about them met those criteria? And I would say that you could talk about internal experience, that they really want to be a woman. But I would say that like until you transition, you take those steps to check those boxes, there was nothing in your essence fundamentally that you were devoid of reality or any actual observable trait about you. So that's why I don't agree with that, because that's just essentialism. And I would agree that that is, I think, the equivalent of kind of a secular version of a soul, which I also don't believe in. So
excellent. Well, Roan, I'm glad that we were able to expunge you of the disgusting mind virus causing you to say such stupid stuff. I'm just kidding. My recommendation to you, for what it's worth, is just as I'm sure you would agree that the right does not do a good job going after its crazies, you should make videos solely dedicated to going after the nonsense that is spewed by such people as this individual.
Yeah,
you would have a lot more credibility amongst me and people who think like me.
Well, then I would just cultivate a conservative following. You have to.
Not necessarily. I don't think I have a. There are definitely conservatives who listen to me, but I think very few of the people who actually watch and agree with most of what I say would describe themselves as conservative. I don't know how you could. I mean, I rail against conservative. The last video I made before this is how Jordan Peterson is a threat to the religious right because the religious fundamentalist view is nonsense.
Yeah, so I guess the one thing that I guess we can end on is this quote by my favorite content creator, Destiny, who said that, you know, you have to be careful whenever you're fighting in one direction for so long that you occasionally turn around and you see who's standing next to you, right? So that's my philosophy, is that I want to call balls and strikes wherever I see them. So whether it's crazy shit on the right or the left or the, you know, the north or the south or wherever on the spectrum that we want to talk about, you know, if you're Nazbol, whatever, that I never want to only criticize one side, because then I'll cultivate a following of crazies on the other that I don't want in my audience. I don't want those people. So that's what I try to do, try to be fair and balance. And I hope that, you know, maybe throughout this conversation, there's been some clarification that, you know, I am not that version of the left, maybe that you.
Yes.
But,
yes, that's fair.
I very much appreciate you having me on.
Thank
Paul.
you.
It's fun as
Thank
always,
you,
man.
Yes, we can speak again in the future about whatever other uber progressive nonsense has blinded you to the truth that I purvey every day on my YouTube channel.
For sure. Strictly for comedic purposes, of course.
Only the only necessary purpose. All right.
Cool, man.
Godspeed, Ron. Peace.
Thanks. Later.